Welcome to the Divine Nature Podcast. Check out divinenature.net for more podcasts, videos, blogs, and commentary from a Christian and biblical worldview perspective. All right, people. Thanks for joining me once again. This is the Explicit for the Divine Nature podcast. Check out divinenature.net for more podcasts, commentary, videos, blogs, and everything from a worldview, biblical, and Christian perspective. Okay, and today I'm going to try and get into the rest of a video that we were analyzing, and the mind of the secularist extremist. Okay, how secularism can become extreme. We've seen that in history, where once in power, the anti-God worldview goes ballistic and then turns on its people and becomes totalitarian. We know that there are many worldviews that can end up in totalitarianism, but this is how it happens among people who start to talk where they speak about tolerance, but then they cannot hold on to the tolerance themselves. And they start berating people, belittling them, and we see how it happens, okay? And this is how it happens. If you checked out the first video, the second video, I'm making my case in those videos as well as this video. So we're going to finish the completion of Mr. Freud Cigar's podcast, and how he tries to define something that he completely is against, and that is religion. Little does he know that his religion is very evident. Okay, and what we're going to show now, and what we're going to feature, is that Mr. Freud is going to try to bring up evidence concerning the LGBT issue. Okay, and he's going to, and you saw in the first two videos, he was criticizing my thought, my religious stance for believing in traditional values. But we're going to see that he says he's going to bring some kind of proof. But let's see what kind of proof he does bring.
Let's just go through the numbers here. These are some top-line facts.
Let's go through the numbers.
About the LGBTQ community. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people aged 10 to 14, and the third leading cause of death among 15 to 24-year-olds. That's according to the CDC in 2022. And the LGBTQ community are significantly increased at an increased risk. The Trevor Project estimates that more than 1.8 million LGBTQ plus young people ages 13 to 24 seriously consider suicide each year in the U.S., and at least one attempts suicide every 45 seconds.
Okay, so what he's talking about here is the suffering that a marginalized community of people, or a people group, have to endure and suffer, right? But that wasn't the original argument. If you saw video 1 and 2, what I was saying was that we were talking about the social contagion and the fact that there are people that can be confused, that can be influenced by these things. We're seeing it in the social media. Hardly anyone, okay, unless you're in the extremist fringe groups like I believe he is, that wants to deny that social media is influencing this increase, thus social contagion. And we saw that video of Joe Rogan talking about this issue. Now, I'm not placing him there as an authority, although Mr. Freud would try to pretend that I am, but I'm not. I basically put him on there because he is liberal. He's not conservative by any stretch, and he's not religious by any stretch. And yet he could see it, okay? And he can see it, and most of America can see it. But you've got the radicalized, the foaming at the mouth, far left agenda, of which this man ends up being one. And he says that he's a researcher, so he has to be objective, right? But apparently not. He's convinced about what he's presenting here, as he says, is the evidence. But what is the evidence of what? The fact that they suffer? Can people not suffer and be confused or or actually believe, like they feel that they're confused about something. Now there this has nothing to do with the argument as to whether someone is born or not born of in this orientation. I disagree with that, but this is not talking about that at this present time. This is talking about the social contagion and the fact that people do get confused. Among those people, they can be such confused that they themselves can become depressed and suicidal, being confused. Now it doesn't open up the argument as to where these people were legitimately, okay, people who were actually quote unquote gay or not. Okay, that was the original argument concerning the social contagion, the confusion, the numbers, the increase, which I find it absolutely. Now I'm getting all my notifications the minute I start my podcast. This is the nature of the beast, people. Okay, if I was charismatic, I'd blame it on the devil, but I'm not. Maybe then again, maybe I should consider. Okay, look. Okay. Here comes the interruptions, and the kids are on the bus. Okay, we got a limited amount of time. I really want to listen to him and hear this stuff. This is not evidence. This is evidence that people suffer. Just like cops, there's a statistics of cops killing themselves. It doesn't mean that they were born a certain way. That doesn't mean that's not the argumentation in this place right now. That's not what we're arguing for. That doesn't argue towards contagion. Basically, it argues that people are troubled out there and we have to help them. Okay? What he's saying is that by telling them the truth, by sticking and standing to the truth and not caving in and not buckling and not having this massive wave that's going on in society, even in corporate, in department stores, in signage, and all of this stuff, that we're going to somehow push them any further into suicide. No, because if the more affirmation of lies, the more confusion. That's the way it actually works. You can't help a person who is set to harm themselves. But if you've got the mixed messages that especially the far left culture is pushing, that's where you're seeing the numbers increase. The answer is never to just continue confusing them more. You don't teach braille to the whole classroom just because one child is blind. You don't do that. That's going in the wrong direction. Let's continue listening.
The Trevor Project's 2023 U.S. National Survey on the Mental Health of LGBTQ young people found that 41% of LGBTQ plus young people seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year, including roughly half of transgender and non-binary youth. Now, I asked the audience why. What is driving members of the LGBTQ community to consider and even attempt and sometimes actually be successful at suicide? One, I'm going to tell you, you tell me what you think it is. Bisexual people, almost 48% of bi young people seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year, and 27% that actually did attempt suicide. Among gay or lesbian youth, 37% considered suicide and 19% attempted. So we have a large percentage of the LGBTQ community attempting suicide.
Yep. Yep. They want you to believe.
Oh, his own ignorance and his own stubbornness. But let me play his message first.
Yeah, the reason why this is happening is due that
To this, and you're pretty much on point here. This religious zealot, BX fucking blues.
Okay, there you go. You see the berating. You see that all because I believe in traditional values. You see that? Do I completely believe that his mentality, his extremist mentality, is not functioning, is not flourishing for humanity. But okay, do I light the torches and bring out the pitchforks for him? We're not doing that. Our standard is, you know, basically live and let live. But we can speak out because we've got freedom of speech. According to this guy, you can't speak out against something you don't believe in because you're going to be called a stupid idiot, a moron, expletives left and right, subhuman. This is absolute abuse. If this were to increase in society, what do you think is going to happen to, people of faith? They're going to be attacked, and people of faith are supposed to stand for a moral value that says you don't treat people the same way they're treating you. You don't treat people in the aggressive ways that they're treating on you. And then the next step is to, well, in order for the common cause of goodness, we've got to attack on violence. We've seen that. We've seen that warped morality that says the only way to bring change is to blow people up, blow things up, knock things down, paint over stuff. This is the same mentality. This is not the Christian. This is not a standard set in proper morality, but this is where he's going with it. Okay, he says, let me bring out the numbers, let me bring out the proof, and what he does is bring up the demonstration of people that are suffering because of of what we're very arguing about. Okay, because of the issue of the conflict of the back and forth between the truth and the lies. Well, there are people suffering because of it. Okay, so do we help people out by making it wide scale, helping people with the truth, or do we help confuse people by lying further to them? Okay, and telling them and appeasing them and stroking them in lies. Okay, that's what we have to decide here. He's not bringing up science. He's supposed to be a researcher. He's not. He's not bringing up anything. He brings up studies from the Trevor Institute, which is left-leaning, and they believe in the same things that he does, but he's supposed to be objective. Okay? I don't think so.
Let's play it again. Yes, and I'll take it. I would respond. Here we go. No, I know. Let's play it again. Oh, no, he's coming back. I see him coming back through. That's why he said last night. Okay, well, let's play this last two real quick. Let's give Dan a little chuckle. Here we go. Of course, you know.
So they're repeating the same message that I said before. That if my child ended up confused, okay, in LGBT confusion, that I would still love my child, but I would recognize that because they're on the internet, because they're part of this culture, they got caught up in it. So he's supposed to expect, well, we're supposed to affirm that he was born that way, that he's just that's the way he is, right? That it's innate to who he is. They want that affirmation, but at the same time, they have to argue for confusion when people decide, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just going to jump off and be, a regular heterosexual human being. Oh, but then that person was never, quote unquote gay. Okay, you see the inconsistency.
I would respond. You think you already know, but you'll still ask. If my kids identify themselves in that confused manner and the culture got to them, I would still love them. So he's okay. This is disgusting as fuck. This is disgusting as fuck, and I'm gonna explain to you why. He thinks that his view of his child being homosexual is that they are confused, and that culture got.
Well, he has said nothing so far. I've recorded a total of 24 minutes into his approximately half-hour podcast. Okay, and the first half of this podcast, he did not provide any kind of proof. He's talking about their suicide, but is there suicide because you're confusing them, or is it suicide because people do not want to accept the truth? Okay, what exactly is the issue? Right? We have to ask ourselves, what exactly is the issue here? He's not bringing up any kind of proof whatsoever. He can't prove that they were innately homosexual or trans. He hasn't done that. He can't do it, right? He can just say, well, it's in the journals and believe the science, believe the evidence. Well, is interpreted by you and by the cultural um, uh, community of people that call themselves researchers and that come up with that. But that's not wide scale consensus, you know. And he can't, and he knows that. So all he can do is tantrum. All he can do is berate you and belittle you, and force you. You're gonna eat this porridge. You're gonna believe it. Okay.
Culture got to them. So let me read this. A 2021 peer-reviewed study by the Trevor Project's researcher published in the American Journal of Community Psychology found that greater experiences of minority stress experiences are associated with increased odds of attempting suicide. LGBTQ.
Now, is this an appeal to emotionality or not? Because we all know that these people are suffering. These children are suffering. Okay, in society. But the question is, why are they suffering? Society. What is the treatment? Okay, that's where the argument is, and that's where he's not going to go because he's going to have to argue morality. And what basis is he in to argue for morality when he's a subjective moralist? Okay, he can't answer to what is right, what is wrong. He can only say, well, what only flourishes in humanity. That's as far as he'll ever go. Oh, my opinion, of course. Sorry, buddy. That's not gonna cut it.
Young people who reported experiencing 4 types of minority stress. Now remember what BX Blues, as a parent, what he said, because this is going to hit hard here. He said his way of loving his child is to view his child's homosexuality as confused and brought on by their culture. So
Amen.
let me read this again. 4 types of minority stress. LGBTQ plus based physical harm is number 1. Discrimination, housing instability, and change attempts by parents were 12 times at greater odds of attempting suicide compared to youth who.
So after the culture does its greatest, okay, in social media, in movies, in music, to try to get them, okay, to separate from their parents and consider their parents just aged dinosaurs. Once it does that fully well, okay, along with all of that, it's all part of the same situation in the media. This is part of the problem. Exactly, because that's what the culture is doing. This culture of death, what it does is it tries to separate us from our children. That's what it does in its movies, in its comedies, in its music, in all forms and facets. Okay, so that's what's happening. So that obviously, then the attempts of change that came out in a study, it's demonstrating that's exactly right. Okay, because the parents are trying to get a kid to not conform to the image of this world. Okay, to the things of this world, to the things of lies, right? Like this gentleman is, who's conformed to the image of a true researcher, of which he's not. Okay, he's someone who's basically just jumped on the bandwagon of the culture of death. Okay, in the higher echelons of elite society, the ones who are doing the studies and the ones that are calling all of these things and setting up, okay, the dynamics of morality surrounding all of this, all of these cultural lies. Just like Darwinian evolution, that people have swallowed up and they actually believe, and now it's gotten to the point where it's so infiltrated in society that this guy would be completely intimidated to think for himself, to think and to look to himself and see his flaws, his own flaws. No, he could never do that. To do that would to open up a whole set of ideals about who he actually is, and I could understand it. It would be way too much for him to handle.
Experience none. Change attempts by parents. So BX Blues, ignorant fucking views, his religion, based on his religious convictions, most likely are going to possibly cause his child, his view of love is to
suicidal ideation and possibly a suicide attempt. But he thinks that's love. He thinks
Well, love is not lying. Okay? Love is not lying. His morality is so twisted and upside down. And just like the Bible talks about, in the last days they will be lovers of themselves. And they consider themselves wise. God gave them over to their depravity and their foolish ways. Right? The Bible called this guy's bluff thousands of years ago. Okay? He is a poster child for what a person should not be in terms of counseling confused and wayward children. Okay? That's just how it is. That's just how it is. I would love to see a study, though, a practical study of how many of these youth are not studying these things and who have spent absolutely no time on the internet. That would be a great study. I'm just tossing that out there. Have they ever added a study where we actually know of parents who are conservatives? How many of these parents are conservative parents or actually Bible believing, church going families? That's what I would like to see. See, when you're objective, you will start adding objective parameters to your studies and your experiments. But when you're a leftist liberal, a person who is riding the wave of the cultural popular thought and groupthink, like this guy is, you'll set parameters that basically will just justify the findings that you want to find, that you already believe in, right? And then you'll look across the aisle at people who just don't think like you, and you have nothing but to persecute them, okay? Berate them and belittle them, even though our nation was founded in the freedoms of religion and the freedom of thought. This gentleman does not believe that, but he calls himself an American.
basing his views on some old ass religious text and fucking Christian dumbass.
That's the foundation of your very freedom, sir. Okay? Try to explain that our freedoms don't come from anyone but from God. Try to explain that to me. Okay? If you truly can't believe those things, okay? If you believe in unalienable rights, you can't possibly believe and curse, okay, God and religion. You can't, because then that means that these rights don't belong to you. Because if you believe that they come from government, then what government gives, government takes away, right? Eventually. And you are part of that system that wants to take it away, your very freedoms. So he's basically pulling the rug he's standing on and cutting the branch he's sitting on.
Views is love, and ignoring the science, ignoring the data, ignoring the facts of reality. That's love. He thinks
Ignoring the science, ignoring the data that he has not presented. What data? That people that are confused, kill themselves or commit suicide or are depressed. We know this. We know this. People of all types of depression for whatever various reasons. That doesn't mean that the best therapy is to go around and telling them that there's something that they're not. Okay? You know, you can accept their feelings and what they feel and understand that, yes, I know you feel that. That's what you feel. Those feelings are genuine, but they're coming, their source and the reason, the cosmology of those feelings. There's a reason for it, and it's coming from somewhere. Sometimes we don't know. Sometimes traumas are that well repressed. We know these things are true, but it doesn't mean that you have to tack on an identity. The one identity I wish this gentleman would shave off of himself, it would be the identity of a objective researcher, because that he is not.
ignoring the facts, blaming it on culture, saying they're confused. He thinks that's fucking love. That's not love, Gibbs Blues. That's hate. That's stupidity. That's ignorance. And that's stubbornness. You motherfucker.
There you go.
Go fuck yourself, you motherfucker.
To fear the Lord is to hate evil.
There you go, people. There you go. What else is there to hear? Let's see. We have just a few more minutes of this nonsense, and I'll feel good about at least having him play so people can hear him.
A pride and arrogance, evil behavior. That an ad hominem? What the fuck I was gonna say? That among LGBTQ plus people.
Notice he's having problems with saying LGBT. He's always saying BLGBWXYZ. It's like he's tripping over the same people he's trying to protect. I just have to notice that he keeps doing that. It's LGBT. I mean, that's the way everyone says it.
Only one third experience parental acceptance. Think about that. We're back on BX Blues as a parent if he had a homosexual kid. Only one third of the LGBTQ, and I'm assuming this is probably, this includes trans, right? So this is all lesbians, gay, bisexuals, trans, and queer, right? So only one third experience parental acceptance. How disgusting is this shit? One third? One fucking third? We're looking at close to 70% of parents who don't accept their child for being gay, for being trans, being queer, bi. One third acceptance rate.
Why is that? Because people do not believe what the far left extremist foaming in the mouth, ideological, nightmare having, dark thought thinking, leftist, immoralist believe. We don't believe that nonsense. We don't believe it. We believe in the suffering. We get the suffering. We understand that we're living in confused times. We recognize that. Okay? But most people do not believe it. Okay? They're not going to believe it just because some elitist, you know, researchers, okay, in the culture say it. No matter how much you slap it up against the wall, okay, we recognize that these things, that there is a social contagion, which was the main argument, and he has not addressed it. He has not proved that this is not social contagion. Why? Because most of it corresponds to our common sense. Okay, it corresponds to our common sense in knowing that that we see the numbers, we see the push from the government, we see the endorsements, we see Hollywood, we see corporate America adding this. We see this. We follow the money. Okay, the bigwigs, the elitists, the donations. Okay, and we see the push for it. We see then the increase. How can you then tell people that you don't see anything? Your eyes are closed. No, sucker. My eyes are fully open. I see the clouds, and I see your dumb butt talking nonsense in front of me.
With additional one third experiencing parental rejection and the final one third not disclosing the LGBTQ identity until.
Now, I must say, I do not agree with abusing people that are confused. I'm simply arguing for causation. I'm arguing for the cultural response to this, but I'm not saying that we should be cruel to these people, to our own. If, like I said, if my child was that confused, if my child came across that way, I'm not going to think that God made a mistake, okay, or that God creates people this way. No, I'm going to believe that there's a reason, there's an emotional, a traumatic, or any other possible reasons that I just do not understand, an experiential thing I do not understand about my child, okay, and some kind of influence or something. These are the possibilities that make sense to me, right? But I'm not going to believe that, well, yeah, this happens in people have different orientations. Okay, some people have orientations for sex or hypersexualities. Other people have orientations for violence, things that they have to deal with in life, right? There's different people, and so I'm not going to say that it's what they say it is simply because they say it. And simply because they're going to push that narrative and then bully people that don't believe in it. It's not, That's not what it's about. So, but as far as, but we still do have to be sensitive towards people who feel this way, okay, and respect them as human beings and love them enough to tell them the truth, okay. And I I dwell and my realm is within the four walls of scripture. That is my dedication. That is what I'm committed to. I'm not going to add an opinion outside of what I believe is covered in scripture, in biblical understanding. Okay? And I think that he cannot argue against that understanding if what he has is what his opinions are. Well, I just think this is good for society. Yeah, well, where does that come from? There's no foundation in that. Okay? So, he's not in any place to argue.
They are adults. So BX Blues and his like think love is rejection. Rejection of what their child is. No, that's your fucking insecurity as a man. That's your insecurity as a
How would he know what my child is? Just because somebody claims something, he already diagnosed them. This is worse than a diagnosis. This is basically putting yourself in the place of God and saying you are this. How does he know my kid isn't confused? How does he know my kid at his teen years won't decide and then turn around and say, well, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. I think this is wrong. I think and what happens? And he'll be fake, according to him. Oh, he wasn't really an innate, born to be that way person. Okay, so I mean, get your common sense. I mean, he just took his common sense and tossed it away, and never to be seen ever again. Somebody help him find his common sense.
parent. That's your ignorance as a human being. That's your stubbornness in ignoring the science.
Ignoring the science.
Another study found that LGB young adults who report high levels of parental rejection are 8 times more likely to report attempted suicide and 6 times more likely to report high levels of depression. So a motherfucker like BX Blues, a parent like BX Blues,
See, this is. I mean, he's just tossing depravity and diarrhea from his mouth more than he's talking any kind of facts. So people are suffering, but you haven't demonstrated that they're not suffering because you're confusing them, because the culture that you are a big fan of, that you're part of, you haven't demonstrated that that suffering isn't because of you telling them that there's something that they're not. Okay? You haven't demonstrated that. What he's saying is because a person is going to be honest with their child and say, look, whatever you're going through, whatever, understand that the culture is pushing this, and many people want to understand and interpret their feelings in this way or that way, and we need to explore these things, you know. But he's not. He's trying to prove. He's trying to say that the person that's going to love their child to the truth is the cause, but he's not defending that it's not his affirmations that's confusing the children even more. Okay, that's the other side of the argument. How is he going to prove that? Oh, am I going to prove him that that's what's happening because of the suffering? I could use the same evidence. Well, they're suffering because of massive affirmation, because of the confusion that's because of the commercials, because of the Instagram, because of social media. That's more of an evidence for me than it is for him. Okay, because this is on the increase. Okay, this isn't decreasing. This is on the increase. More people are identifying themselves as queer or being in that people group more and more. Just the same way, at the same rate as society, or at least in the Western world, in the Western liberal world, is affirming these things more and more. Okay? So that is my evidence against him. That's not, their suffering is my evidence against him. It's not against me. Okay? He's not demonstrating anything by showing to me that people are suffering.
who thinks his child is confused, and it's the culture. If not loving this child, he may be contributing to a higher risk of suicide and depression of his own fucking child. And he says that's fucking love. No, that's not love. That's not love. Is that love to you?
Yeah, he doesn't know what love is because to him, okay, to him, love is Rapunzel, okay, Romeo and Juliet. The movie that he saw, when Harry met Sally, his set of love is feelings based. It's me, Bob, you, Jane. Okay, that's what love is to him. He doesn't understand sacrifice. Okay, truth is when you can live in the truth. You're loving someone. You're loving someone because of because of your post on the earth. Because of you're a man, so you love your wife because that's what husbands do. Okay, and so you find that the emotions come as a result of it. Okay, so he's talking about, well, if you hurt my feelings, that means you don't love me. I mean, come on. So this is about he's about to finish here. Let's let him get the last word on this segment.
Okay, I remember.
All right, so he's pretty much done. That's pretty much on there. Um, that's all he basically has. There's really nothing else that could come out of that. There's really nothing else you can say to someone who's that far entrenched in this liberal leftist, you know, uh, uh, mindset. Okay, a person who's supposed to be a professional, objective. If he's a researcher, he has to be objective. No, is this person objective? Okay, what kind of study sample is he going to use? Is he going to find that fits properly within an objective standard? What when they say, well, science is supposed to weed out the bias, right? Good luck with that. Bias will seep in all the time, and bias when you're dealing with humanity. Okay, you can do the best you can because at least we have a standard, a standard to minimize the bias. But will that happen? Okay, when it's humans who are actually conducting the studies, let's be real. It's not that we can never get to a unbiased results, but that's what we're working with in this time, in this world of relativism, in this world uh, of there's no such thing as truth, in this world of, well, you can never be 100% correct, or truth is relative, or you can't really reach the truth only to the 99.99%. When you're thinking about that and you're living in that, okay, that's going to seep into the culture, that's going to seep into the educational system, in the legal system. It's going to corrupt humanity. Okay, and that's where you get individuals like this who basically didn't take a sip of the Kool-Aid. They basically drank the whole pitcher. Okay, so that's basically that. I want to thank you for joining me today. Um, I think this concludes my three-part series on Freud's moral soap opera. I hope you enjoyed it. Okay, so until next time, take care and God bless. Also, check out True News. Check out divinenature.net for more podcasts and more blogs and commentary from a Christian and biblical worldview. Until next time, take care. God bless. All right, you're listening to the Divine Nature Podcast, a blog and cultural commentary ministry dedicated to declare the gospel of Jesus Christ, to reach out to those who have ears to hear by the power of the Holy Spirit. Check out divinenature.net for updates on blogs, videos, and more podcasts. And don't forget to share if you care. Until next time, God bless.